Randomly countering with your own armored drive impact at the best possible moment. What's that? Let's read on. Nothing. No mention of meter whatsoever, especially drive meter, the most important mechanic of the game. Why are these people even reviewing the games? Like, I don't get it. So I was watching a Gamers Nexus video, and they kind of mentioned Rock Paper Shotgun as a great place to get like indie game news and keep up on that kind of stuff. And it's true. When it comes to that kind of stuff, when it comes to general gaming news, it seems to be pretty good. But I am very curious as to their fighting game side of things, just to see, because that's what I like. So right off the bat, indie fantasy RPG, Morrowind-like, that's cool. Okay, that, and ooh, a new fractal case. You should have shitting. Quietly fixed. Oh, that's interesting. Titanfall 2 was a good game. Okay, MK1. 3 days ago. Everyone's a critic. That's cute. With its steadfast love of imploding skulls and disintegrating rib cages, Mortal Kombat has always been the most adolescent of fighting games. Might be using its conspicuous numeric digit to suggest a reset or rethink of some kind. But in truth, okay, this person is probably expecting a major overhaul of just the way the game even works. While part of me wishes the surface level overhaul had been more radical, it's maybe unwise to expect that. For decades, the series has embraced its love of brainless ultra-violence and childish storytelling. If MK1 can be praised for anything, it is unwavering commitment with a K to the bit. Alright, so I'm just right off the cuff. I'm expecting this review to be centered mostly around the story mode and how this person doesn't really like how violent the game is. Which is like, why are you even reviewing it? First off, don't flip out. The fighting itself is still decent. The move list for each character is a clean and digestible 3-course meal, compared to, say, the all-you-can-barf smorgasbord of Tekken's character movesets. In true 2D fighter form, it encourages a versatility of violence with a limited palette? And it works. A limited palette? Okay. One Sindel you face online will make teleporty dive kicks the backbone of her assault, while another Sindel might rely more heavily on cartwheeling mix-ups, but every hair-whipping queen will throw out the basics. That's kind of how every fighting game should work if it's developed properly. You should have a character played by two different people who have kind of a different style. They might emphasize slightly different things, but they should all be throwing out the basics. That's why it's called the basics. Whether it delivers that sensation as finely as its predecessor is another matter. For some indescribable feeling in my fingertips, it doesn't seem as impactful or fierce to me as MK11 did. That's a hard act to follow. It does strive to make up for that with some twists, namely cameo fighters. For me, there are a lot of reasons I didn't much like MK11, and I've gone over those before. I want to know, like, what specifically is it about this one? Because this is a review. So what are the differences between the previous game and the current game? Why does this sentence exist? It doesn't seem as impactful or fierce to me as MK11 did. I don't think he's going to go into it because he says for some indescribable feeling in my fingertips. So that's kind of disappointing because this is a review. Cameo blow from a twirling Kung Lao can begin or supplement your horrendous combo. Horrendous? It's a weird... Does he mean because of how, like, violent the combo is? Probably. While other cameos act as kind of a panic function, Scorpion, as a backup fighter, can you... Just call them cameos, that's what they're called. Can use his ropey knife, it's trademarked, to pull you away from your enemy, letting you dodge incoming strikes. It's not really like a panic thing. It's still strategic, like... Okay, Sub-Zero has as a Biff buddy. With some judicious reflexes, read panicked button mashing. These cameos also show up to break you out of an opponent's combo at the expense of some meter, similar to the breakaway effect of the previous game, with the added pleasure of seeing Frost dropkick your enemy from across the room. Okay. Online fights are still in purest distillation of the game's juice. Casual mode wasn't super populated this past week. Had to stick to ranked mode. This is what the sentence says. Due to early access and the game not being out yet, casual matches weren't populated, so I had to play ranked. So if this first sentence right here, this first paragraph, including this first sentence, didn't already give me the impression that this person resented and had contempt for the series and probably didn't even like fighting games that much to begin with, then misrepresenting what the combo breaker system in this game is, comparing it to Breakaway, big mistake, because they're extremely different. Not going into why they're different at all, just saying in MK11 you can break out of combos, and in MK1 you can also break out of combos, and not going into the differences between this one and that one and why one is better and one might not be as good or whatever. This right here will absolutely, like, this does it for me as far as like what kind of fighting game player this person is. Casual, there weren't enough people to play casual matches, so I had to play ranked. Okay. Salt-inducing personality quirks aside, online fights offer that familiar Karate Kid self-improvement ladder, learning to distinguish the genre and competitive pastime. In short, I lost a lot, yet did not stop. That's a good attitude to have. I was talking about the stutters and stuff during the cinematics. Okay. That's the least of the single-player story's problems. Off-kilter voiceover, Uncanny Valley mocap. Given the chance to reinvent story. Okay, story. Storytelling throughout is childlike. Multiverse complaints. Genuinely interesting payoff. Strenuous buckling of plot. Okay. There are other things I admire about this installment. Background environments, vibrant detail, tea house, bystanders scuttle away, treasure vaults, gleaming gold, laboratory, experimental flesh dude. Story mode, okay. Story might often be hokum, but as with its predecessor, I can't deny the level of craft and finesse. Yep. In short, that's it. Doesn't go into any of the changes from the previous game to the current one in terms of gameplay. Doesn't discuss the meter at all, which is extremely important. The defensive and offensive separation of meter in MK11 that is also based on a cooldown rather than building it up as you fight. And then fatal blows. No mention of that. No mention of how it's the same as MK11. No mention of air combat, no mention whatsoever of the differences between Breakaway and Combo Breaker, which is extremely important. No mention of the way cameos work in terms of the cooldown meter, how you can, use 3 different kinds of cameo attacks, and they're used for different reasons. There's no mention of how the ranked system works. Is it infinite rematch, or is it like Street Fighter where it locks you after playing a best of 3, and then you have to be forced to go back into ranked search or whatever? Is there King of the Hill mode? What other single player modes are there other than the story mode? What's practice mode like? Does it give you hitboxes or not? Does it give you frame data or not? You brought up the move list. What does it look like? Like, what does it tell you? Does it give you any extra information, like the frame data? Like in practice mode, can you pull up like a demo? Are there combo trials? What's the tutorial? Nothing. It's all like a first paragraph that shows contempt for the game, which makes me think this person doesn't even like the series, which might not be true, but that's all I get from reading this. And then barely a mention of any gameplay stuff whatsoever. Barely a mention of the cameos. A misrepresentation entirely of how the combo breaker system works, and even kind of how cameo system works. Like, no representation for how that works at all, actually. And then story, 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 done. All right, I want to check out the Street Fighter 6 review. Lewis Parker, it's a different person. Okay, back in February 1991. Yeah. Capcom released Street Fighter 2. It was hugely successful. Mainstream story mode is gonna suck. World Tour mode. Not just a series of cutscenes broken up by fights. 10-hour-long tutorial disguised as the Yakuza-style RPG. Every enemy minigame designed in some way to impart some kind of fighting game knowledge to the player. People new to the genre won't realize they're being taught something. That's all true and good. Blah, 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 blah. Minigames, rhythm games, really specific fighting, glass-breaking minigame, subtly trying to teach players to perform charge special inputs. That's true, that's cool. 3 control schemes. Okay. We're getting into gameplay stuff. Hopefully this will be better. And here's the thing, I don't care. Reviews mean nothing to me. I don't think I've cared about any kind of game review for any type of game for like 15 years. So I don't care whether they like the game or not. If they're going to give the game a good or a bad review, I want them to go into a lot of detail as to why. Because every other game genre gets the luxury and privilege of the reviewer really knowing what they're talking about and spending time to explain the intricacies of what makes this game good or bad and what the difference is between the predecessors and the successors, if there are any predecessors, if it's not a brand new IP. And if it is a brand new IP, then they take that time, and rather than comparing it to any predecessors, since there are none, they compare it to constituents within the genre and within the style of game. And it doesn't seem like the last person didn't do any of that whatsoever with MK11. So let's just see. So 3 control schemes. Classic standard Street Fighter. Yes. Modern special moves require single direction to execute, 1-button auto combos. Trade-off, modern control, special moves weaker, removes access to certain combo routes. It removes access to certain buttons, which mostly affects neutral and not combos, because actually with modern, there is a way that you can access typically inaccessible normal moves so that you can do more traditional combo rounds. So that's wrong. Capcom wants players eventually graduate to classic. Possibly, but with Haitani getting top 6 at EVO with modern Chun-Li, that's not necessarily true either. Although this is way before that happened. And honestly, that was kind of a mentality that everyone, including me, had. Start with modern, graduate to classic. We now know that that's not necessarily the case. You can stick with modern all the way, really. Which is a good thing, I think. So I don't blame them for that whatsoever. I had the exact same thoughts. Personally, I think dynamic control scheme might be the most interesting. Entire combos, directional inputs based on 1-button input, essentially making it AI assistant. That's the most interesting one. Okay. Perform cross-ups with ease, perfectly choosing the right normal special attack to offset whiff punishes, randomly countering with your armored drive impact at the best possible moment. Yeah, that's not the most interesting aspect of the game to me, but it is a good thing, I think, that it's in there. Fighting ground gets into fighting ground, expanded practice mode. Yep. Sharpened skills. Veterans will be happy about practice mode, combo trials, arcade mode, extremely refined. New and old players like, well, extreme battle. Okay, cool. Several different modes, stage hazards and debuffs. Yep. Thanks to whichever wizards at Capcom are in charge of implementing rollback netcode. Games Online Battle Hub. I feel confident in saying that, from what I could test, 360's online experience feels consistent enough to rival any fighting game currently available. It probably stands ahead and above any fighting game currently available, I would say. Several players, USA and Asia, England. Properly sizing up the meta for a fighting game is an impossible task unless you have roughly 1,000 hours to spare. There are a few standout characters I spent my time learning. Kimberly is probably my favorite. That makes sense. So, Now, that's hyperbole, is 1,000 hours, but I'm going to stick to that number because that's what they used. Why is it a bad thing to spend 1,000 hours playing Street Fighter 6, but it's not a bad thing to spend 1,000 hours playing Skyrim, or Grand Theft Auto 5, or Baldur's Gate 3, or StarCraft, League of Legends, Dota? It's like commendable for other game genres that you're like, man, I could spend 1,000 hours with this game. But for fighting games, it's like, man, I have to spend 1,000 hours with this game. It doesn't make sense to me. Now, from the perspective of like, okay, SF6 is your ground zero, your absolute ground zero. You've never played a fighting game before in your entire life, and you're starting here. Yeah, that sentence kind of makes sense. Although, again, it's hyperbole. But you'll spend the time, you'll find how quickly you can actually improve if you actually are setting out to improve. If you go in saying, I'm going to try to learn something from this session, you'll be surprised how quickly you can actually become proficient at the game. Now, for everyone else, this sentence it seems kind of like an excuse, because for this person who I guarantee has played other fighting games before, whether for their own personal enjoyment or for their job, there have been countless hours that they could have spent getting better at the game, so that by the time Street Fighter 6 comes out, they don't have to feel like, oh my god, I have to spend 1,000 hours just to learn how to play. Because you're not starting over from scratch if you've played other fighting games. The genre is definitely legacy skill based, for sure, and legacy knowledge based. Even though things may change, even radically, like, you're still taking a lot of your knowledge and experience from the previous games. Since 2009, I'm talking about just the modern era of gaming here, since Street Fighter 4 came out. Even as a casual player, if you just got rid of the mindset of like, oh my god, it's going to take me forever just to learn blah, 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 and you just played and you just learned and you just had fun and you kept playing consistently and you became proficient within the first couple years of Street Fighter 4 being out, then by the time Street Fighter 5 came out, you would already have a huge leg up and you wouldn't feel like it's going to be impossible to learn all these new characters. And then you'd get even better over the course of another 7 years of one game being out. And you'd also play other games. You'd play KOF 13 and maybe even 14 and 15. You'd play the MK games. You'd play 3D games to learn what's the difference between 2D and 3D. And then by the time Street Fighter 6 comes out, you won't put something like this in your review, because you won't feel that way. You'll be like, I can pick up Guile or Cammy or Ryu and feel like I'm right at home. But they don't. They don't. People like this, they'll play the game, they'll say, oh, the story mode sucks. Oh, I hate playing online because I just get beat. I'm just gonna like play the story mode, and then I'm gonna play against the CPU a little bit until I get bored, and then I'm gonna turn it off. And that's gonna happen over the span of a weekend. They're never gonna touch the game again. And then the next game comes out, they're gonna be like, oh, same crap over again. And then they're gonna feel like they have to start from scratch because they never got out of that phase where they're starting from scratch, because they do it with every game that comes out. And then these are the people who are reviewing these games. Gameplay comes first. That's why they're called games. To me, maybe it's the era I came from. What I look for in games, gameplay is first. Story is secondary. But to these people, the gameplay, with any game they play, it seems that the gameplay is a means to the end, and the end is getting a fulfilling narrative with a beginning, middle, end, character arcs. Maybe it's a little emotional, maybe it's a little bit comedic and fun, whatever it is, but they're looking for a good story, and the gameplay is just a tool to get you through that process. As awesome as Final Fantasy VII story mode is, it's not a story mode. As awesome as that game's story is, I'm talking about the original on PlayStation, I can't bring myself to go back to play the game just for the story, because I don't like turn-based RPGs. I understand that for that genre, that gameplay in the original FF7 is incredible. Top-notch. It's not my cup of tea. The story is amazing, but I can't bring myself to play the game just to experience the story. The gameplay needs to be there as well. The Last of Us, in my opinion, the best story ever told in video games. Like, ever. But I can't bring myself to go back and play those games again because, you know, while it's far less the case in The Last of Us than it is in Uncharted, but that's even an even better example. The story in that series is fantastic. I still can't bring myself to go back and play them again because they're basically walking simulators. And then when you get to the point where you actually have freedom in gameplay and can kind of play the game almost the way that you want to, and it can be maybe a little bit different from the way the next person plays the game, which is the gun combat. It's still, in Uncharted, it's not as good as like actual shooting games, like Gears of War or like a first-person shooter. The gunplay is kind of lacking. And because I'm so disappointed in the gameplay in the Uncharted series, much less so in The Last of Us, I think gameplay-wise it's a lot better and has a lot more video gamey stuff. But like, I still can't force myself to go back and play those games just to experience the story because I'm so underwhelmed with the gameplay. However, it seems like for most people these days, that's fine because as long as the story is incredible, that's it. I find it kind of weird that I'm trying to... Yeah, here we go. This sentence right here. Just as so many other fighting games still choose to do and still have been widely praised based solely on the strength of its multiplayer, Capcom could have easily half-assed the story mode. I think this part right here still have been widely praised based solely on the strength of its multiplayer. I feel like at best that's kind of misguided because that's the point of these games. Yeah, like, it's fine. It's fine that King of Fighters 13 is one of the best fighting games of all time without a good story mode. That's okay. Because that's only one aspect, and it's not even close to being the most important aspect. So it's okay for a fighting game to be widely praised despite having a half-assed story mode. Because Uncharted is widely praised solely based on its story mode and the things that come with the story mode. The cinematics, the set pieces that practically play themselves. Okay, people are complaining about QuickTime events, but nobody complains about how all of the cinematic set pieces are just holed up on the left analog stick for minutes on end. They're walking simulators. But the spectacle is so amazing and the way it ties into the story is so amazing that those games have been praised on their graphics, voice acting, and story alone. Gameplay doesn't really seem to factor into the situation. But when it's flipped and you're talking about a game that's got a great art style, really good voice acting, incredible animations by an art team that just really is at the top of their game, backgrounds that are very interesting and might even be interactable to an extent depending on the game, gameplay that's extremely refined and balanced. No mention of the balance whatsoever so far, of how honestly Street Fighter 6 I think is the best balance that a modern fighting game has had right from the outset without any patches, except for fixing like bugs, right? The bug with Rashid, a bug with JP, and then that's it. And then like Snake Eyes won a tournament with a character who like is consistently considered bottom tier, Zangief, against a player, an Evo champion. Snake Eyes is an Evo champion as well, winning a tournament against a fellow Evo champion with a character that people will argue whether they're top 1 or top 2. That's good balance to me. And that's also a testament to how great Snake Eyes is as a player, but that's also really an example of the balance of the game. Fighting Ground. We read this. Fast travel. So they're still talking about the single player mode. This is all single player still. RPG integrated World Tour. Marker map per usual. World Tour. That being said, these are minor nitpicks. Radical direction Capcom the story mode. Although the performance issues take the shine off things, I can still comfortably say the most fun I've had with any fighting game on release. After the disastrous launch of Street Fighter V, it's back on top. It just feels right. Extremely excited to see what's next. That's it. That's it. No mention of the differences whatsoever. No mention of drive meter. I know I skimmed through it, but drive. What is this? Okay, that's not even a part of the review, so I'm not even going to worry about what that was. Random encountering your armor, drive impact. This is the sentence about the dynamic control scheme. That's it. No mention of meter whatsoever, especially drive meter, the most important mechanic of the game. That's my point, man. Story is first, gameplay is secondary or even tertiary. Why are these people even reviewing the games? Like, I don't get it. It makes no sense to me. But it's so frustrating. I would much prefer a negative review that went into specifics, because any other genre, again, they get the luxury and the privilege of having the specifics and the minutia discussed and analyzed and reviewed, and fighting games don't. They just don't. It's just, is the story mode good? No, here's why. Is the story mode good? Yes, here's why. The fighting is okay. The fighting is decent as usual. But it's like, well, what makes it different from the previous game? This is why reviews just haven't meant anything to me for 15 years, basically. This is like not even the bare minimum, in my opinion, because there are so many things missing about what makes this game tick. And they were both positive reviews of the games, but I don't understand what it is that they find positive about the game other than the story mode. But like, the last person didn't even like the story mode and they still gave the game an overall positive review. What was it then about the game other than the story mode that you liked that for all intents and purposes you recommended it for? I'm confused. It seemed like you didn't like the game based on everything you said. I don't understand how that's an acceptable review. And then this one, I do understand what they like about the story mode, but like, you go into talking about the characters that you played. Kimberly is my favorite addition to the cast. Stylish mix-ups and screen control options that feel strong. Like what? That's so vague. Blanca's most interesting returning character, enough subtle mechanical changes to make him feel fresh. Like what? What does that mean? That's such a vague... That seems like something someone would say if they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know how to actually specify what it is that they like. Ken is your favorite version of the character, and that's simply based on style points alone. But what is it about him? Like, you don't go into any of his new moves. You don't go into his run cancels. You don't go into any of the drive mechanics at all. You don't go in. You don't even mention that there's a new meter that's never existed before that's separate from super meter. You don't go into how every character now has 3 supers, a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3, and how, you know, you can use one for this, one for that. You don't go into how stun works. You don't go into burnout whatsoever, arguably the most important aspect of the game. You don't go into any of the defensive options in a general sense. What does drive impact even do? You mention it once. You mention that dynamic mode controls will allow you to do a drive impact at the most opportune time, whatever that means, but you don't even go into what that is. What is that? You know, Street Fighter 6 seems pretty cool. It's got that kind of weird hip-hop kind of vibe, and I say weird because the hip-hop vibe in Street Fighter 6 is kind of whack, but whatever. I like the art style. I might want to get into it. It's kind of colorful, you know, whatever. Let me get back into it and see what it's like. I don't know anything about it. Let me read this review. These inputs often result in your character performing cross-ups with ease. Okay, a cross-up, I just jump forward and press a button. That seemed easy enough, but I guess dynamic controls makes that easier. Okay, perfectly choosing the right normal or special attack to offset whiff punishes. I don't know what offsetting whiff punishes means, but whatever. Randomly countering with your own armor to drive impact at the best possible moment. What's that? Let's read on. Nothing. What is drive? What does that mean? Hold on, let me take a look at the screenshot. Okay. What's that? That seems weird. That's new. I don't know what that is. Is that a stun bar? Guard gauge? Like in the alpha games? What is that? That's kind of weird. I don't know what that is. Let me see if he mentions it. No. Drive rush, nothing. Drive reversal, nothing. Chip damage, how does that work? Nothing. Burnout, nothing. Stun, nothing. Drive is the most important aspect of the game, bar none. No mention of it whatsoever, except dynamic controls let you do your armored drive impact at the best possible moment. What does that mean? What's the best possible moment? Like, what does that mean? What does that amount to? Nothing. This review is nothing. Anyway, that's all I have. That's all I have. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.